Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm the host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a founder, performance coach, former world ranked athlete, and the executive coach lead at Google. With over a decade of experience working with Fortune 100 companies, governmental agencies, professional athletes, students, and community leaders, he has become a leading expert in helping individuals and teams achieve peak performance through long-lasting behavioral change. He's the author of the book, The Next Right Move, Starting Strong to Being the Who You Want to Be. Welcome to the show, Coach AK.
What's up? What's up, Matt? How you doing? Super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on the show. You know, we have similar backgrounds in
Yep, yep.
athletics, and we were talking before we jumped in. I was just really a big fan of somebody who's achieved, a high level in any athletic endeavor, because it really parallels to anything you want to do in life, that dedication, the training, and the mindset. So you've definitely done that. And I'd love for you to just, for those who don't know you, tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into the work you're doing.
Well, always this is the toughest question of anything because how do you distill 39 years of life? But for me, I'm a triplet. So I have a twin brother and I have a twin sister, meaning that I have someone that looks like me, exactly like me, someone that kind of looks like me, except with just longer hair. But I guess the reason why I say that is because I literally share my DNA with another person on this planet, but we still navigate through the world differently. We all have our own journeys, we all have our own stories. But, because I was a triplet, I always wanted to venture out and find my own way of doing things because I got tired of always saying, hey, are you Emmy? Are you this? Wearing the same clothes. But I ended up going to the University of Oregon and I ran track and field there. It was at one of the top programs and was lucky to compete and be ranked top 10 in the world in the 4x4 relay. It was just an amazing opportunity. So sports really gave me that opportunity to really overcome some of my own challenges of like mental and physical and really push yourself to the limits. Then that went into me being lucky enough to travel on the European circuit and competing on an international stage. And I believe that my international experience really gives me a really strong lens about just how I really see and navigate through the world. But then, from there, I've done, as any athlete, when that day ends and all of a sudden you're like, what am I going to do? I actually ran away from sports for a while and started doing a lot of business and international business in China, all around the globe. But I decided to get back into it after really finding myself into sports, but now using that same sports background into now in the corporate arena to really help people really reach peak performance professionally and also personally.
Wow. Well, that sounds like an amazing journey, and congrats on all the success. You know what it takes to be an athlete at that level. Not a lot of people, really understand the dedication and everything that goes into it. They kind of see the results, you know what I mean? Like you winning or getting there and like, oh, I wish I had like that genetics, or I had this and this and this. When being in that field of that's only going to take you so far. It's like there are things that separate you from good to great and great to the
Mhm.
absolute best. And when we start discussing peak performance for you, what are some of the basics that you try to help someone with, whether it's an athlete coming to you or whether it's a corporation and say, I got a team of like 50 people and we're doing great,
Yep.
but we'd love you to come in and teach us a little bit about peak performance. How do you frame that?
I wish it was as easy as just saying, if you just do this one thing, everybody can reach peak performance. But, as we're both athletes. And the funny thing is the more you move up the ranks. So, for example, when you're in high school, like everybody can most likely, touch their toes, we'll say. Everybody has a level of what everybody can do. But the more you move up those ranks, it moves more, less, or actually more from or less from skill set to mindset, right? And that's what happens. Everybody does similar trainings at that elite level, but when you're all on that line, and I ran track and field, right? Everybody is going to be on the field at the same time. You're going to be running at 9:06 p.m. on January 21st at this particular time. But when that gun goes off, who's going to let their mind either lead them or hold them back? So a lot of people think it's just about the skill set, but we all know that you can have amazing skill set. We all heard about those phenomenal athletes, and they move up to the next level, and then all of a sudden you never hear of them again. And it's about who is the one that's able to really be able to perform under pressure. Oftentimes I had this conversation earlier with a seller today. I did some work at Google, and we were talking about executive presence. Like, how can you really be on that field to really be able to present in a really big way? And she knew what she needed to do. Well, I did some visual exercise, and I took her to that moment, and she started to get a lot of anxiety. And I told her that anxiety and excitement are the exact same two emotions, except anxiety is imagining the worst case scenarios or negative outcomes, and excitement is imagining the positive outcomes. So in that moment, I told her to sit down. I said, name five things that you're excited about for this next upcoming talk you have to do. And because the goal is we want to reverse and change those negative habits, those negative beliefs into a positive one. And then you can see her whole demeanor change. So at the end of the day, I know this is kind of a long-winded answer, but we always focus about the skills that we need, but it's actually the skills that we need combined with the mindset, and then lastly, combined with the activation. You need all three: the skill set, the mindset, and the activation.
I love that. It's a really practical answer. And then it makes me think about the question, like, what have you seen in your experience through, whether it's your athletic career or corporate coaching, like some sabotages? Are there certain things people do that really just hinder them from being their best when the time comes, whether it's like the racetrack or the meeting or the presentation? Because I've seen that a lot too, where people have all the skill, and then all of a sudden it's time to perform, and then they shake. And then there's other people where they have got no business being at the top, and then time to perform, and all of a sudden they're just in flow state and kicking everybody's butt. You're like, how is this happening?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, let's be real. Even peak performers and athletes, we're not peak all the time. We are real, we are human. We have moments where I've choked on many occasions. So it is not about perfection. I believe it's more about awareness. And so oftentimes what you realize with a lot of those elite athletes or a lot of peak performers is, what are those distractions that are getting in your way? Perfect example, I wrote this book, The Next Right Move. And I've always, for 30 years, said I could never write. And I always made all of these excuses. But I then realized that a lot of the distractions that I had happened in the first 3 minutes of my morning. I knew that if I did not check my phone for the first 3 minutes in the morning, that it dramatically increased the chances of me working out, of me meditating that morning, and me eating healthy versus me scrolling on my phone. So when you ask a lot of people about what's holding them back, most people know. Most people do. And it's not about these secret sauces. It's really about taking that moment, being introspective in yourself, and just thinking about, like, okay, yeah, that extra pint of ice cream isn't helping me. Or this group of friends that I have that are always negative isn't really helping me. Or every single time I'm about to do work, I somehow just start binging on Netflix. It's the ability to have that self-awareness, to have that self-regulation. And we talk a lot about emotional intelligence, but self-regulation is the one that we don't actually talk about. And that's the ability to either do what you know you should do or shouldn't do. And so that ability to say, you know what, maybe I should wake up at 5 o'clock, or maybe I shouldn't eat that thing, or maybe I shouldn't pick up the phone and curse out that individual, is actually what determines success on and off the field, is that self-regulation.
Yeah, I love that one. I'm reminded of a quote that I heard, and it's not exactly aligned, but it's close, where the guy says, what does it take to become Olympic gold medalist? And he says, you got to commit suicide, social suicide, you know what I mean? Basically what he's saying is everything else has to go out. And it's an intense way to say what you're saying, right? So if you're going into Google or whatever, you got a high performing job, right? And you're hungover the next day, right? Well, whether you're a job in like the Canadian oil field where there's a degree of danger, now you've put yourself at risk. But when you have a corporate job, there's less physical risk, but there might be risk of not performing in that meeting, right? And
Hmm.
so if you do this, let's just say once a week, that's 4 times a month, right? But where a peak performer is going to excel is they're going to recognize these things and these downfalls that are sabotaging their performance. And rather than doing it weekly or monthly, they're very rarely making these mistakes that are outside the field or outside the business that are allowing their performance inside the workspace to excel. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
100%. Like, for example, what would happen if I just didn't show up on this conversation today?
Do you mean like show up physically or like not ready to give a nice talk,
No, I
like
just
100%?
physically just didn't show up. We came on and you came on, your camera was on, and I just wasn't here.
Yeah, back to the family, I guess. No show for today. Daughter's
Right?
waiting.
Yeah, daughter's waiting, but let's say, look, sorry, I was watching those YouTube videos. You know, those recommended videos. You know what happens. And you gave me another opportunity. Okay, let's do this next week. And I did another no call, another no show. What would you do then?
Yeah, then it's gonna be more trouble getting back on after two for sure.
And if somebody says, hey, do you know that AK guy? I know he does all that work across the world, but what would you say about me if somebody else were to recommend or ask about me? What would you say?
Yeah, I'd be like, it might be an all right guy, but it could be a little bit flaky, it doesn't show up.
Yeah. And so we just saw what happens from literally one or two times of me no calling and no showing. But as that question, like how often do we no call and no show ourselves? Right? We saw what happened with one time. I'm talking about, oh yeah, I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I'm gonna do that workout. But I didn't. Oh yeah, I'm gonna, make sure I improve that relationship and make that phone call. But I didn't. And we feel like it doesn't cause us damage. But let's say it actually did. Let's say it was actually worse. See, if we were to hold ourselves accountable to the same way we hold third party to ourselves, to your point, we'd be so much more committed. We just don't feel like it causes us damage because we don't get fired, we don't get in trouble. It just passes on, but we don't realize the damage might actually be more.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I'm reminded of this saying someone said in the podcast, I believe, or heard once, but it said, but it was when somebody has a lack of confidence, it's because they keep breaking agreements with
Mm,
themselves. I'm going to get up at this time and they don't. I'm going to go to the gym and they don't. So you do that over and over and say, well, I don't have any confidence. Well, you have this vision for yourself. You know what you need to do, but you're never showing up for yourself. So then you don't have the confidence. But
yeah.
if you get clear on what you want to do, you make a little bit of a plan and just do a little bit, you're going to gain more confidence. And I think another pitfall people have is they want to do too much, right?
Mhm.
Rather than simplifying it. So because the vision or what they see is a little bit too big, they end up doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So just scaling it back and doing a little bit, I feel like could be helpful. And in your book, you talk about micro habits and consistency. And I'm wondering if that can kind of play into what I just shared there.
Yeah, I believe the hardest skill to master is consistency. The number one hardest skill to master is that. We often think to make these really big moves in our lives takes this big action, but oftentimes it's these micro habits or these small actions each and every single day. I said earlier that, you know, for example, I have a 5 month old. Congratulations. I hear you have a one on the way as well. And during that time when I was getting ready when my little, my daughter, my wife was pregnant, I gained a little bit of weight in that time. And I wanted to lose some weight. And I realized like I want to go to the gym. But I actually realized that I didn't need to motivate myself to go to the gym. You hear some dogs going crazy out here. I realized that it wasn't about me motivating myself to go to the gym. I knew that if I just walked out the door with my shoes on, I would do my workout. Or I realized even more when I went down to it, like I said earlier, if I just didn't check my phone the first 3 minutes of my day, I would do the workout, I want to do the meditation. So for all of us, all of these small actions, like what's going to be that micro habit, that small action, that if you do that, it will create that almost snowball effect to the other activities. I work with a lot of leaders and I work with a lot of individuals, and sometimes you realize that I work with CEOs. And oftentimes when I work with CEOs, you think that a lot of their things that they need in executive coaching is business related. But I'm going to tell you the number two things that most CEOs need after the first session of working together. Can you guess what they are? The top two things that a lot of them need.
Well, I don't know, distraction control and like learning how to calm themselves down, like mindfulness or presence.
Yeah, you got the first one. Oftentimes the first one is about the focus is how can I go home and put my phone down is the first one. And the second one is, okay, how can I start tomorrow getting back in shape and taking control of my day? It's not a business decision. It's usually the personal side, because the funny thing is a lot of these leaders, they have advisors, they have boards, they have teams, but they don't have a team in helping them navigate through the day-to-day of life. So executive coaching really oftentimes is business and life, but the business side has so much support systems. But when they take off that CEO hat or that leader hat, they then go home and they're navigating through that situation by themselves.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. Well, it's interesting because I have some friends that are in that space and have kind of left it. And they've said those kind of similar things where often-minded, we can be very laser focused on results at work and we can't leave the work there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of bleeds in. And then what can happen is you have this sacrifice in your family life. And that's not ideal over a long period of time when you value your relationship, your marriage, your, relationship with your children, right? You want to be able to balance that out, but they're so driven to perform at their work. They don't know really how to shut it off. So it's a really important skill to have. And I don't think that that's really taught in business school. So it's nice that you're
it's not even talked about. It's not even talked about. And we think that all of a sudden that because you're in business that you can shut it off. Like, sorry, you can't shut it off. It doesn't work that way. And I think what we've realized during the pandemic is that those lines have been blurred in a really big way. Not blurred. Let's just be real. Is that we were working at home and we felt like we can just take it off and almost forget that part ever existed. Like how many people probably during the pandemic looked in the background like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize you had kids. Like, what, you think that when I went home that I went to work that they just disappeared like Thanos and just disappeared? Like, no, I still had to. And you might not have realized the reason I was leaving every single day at 3:30 p.m. was to pick my kid up from school, not because I was lazy. See, when we actually shoulder ourselves or when we actually hide that parts of ourselves, it actually doesn't help us in the workplace because people are now going to make decisions, but not realizing that there are so many more layers to each and every single one of us. And see, for me, that's what I had to realize. I had to realize when I did sports that I was so laser focused. But we know when that day after comes, right? Not all of us have the Brett Favre type career or the Tom Brady type career where we get to extend our careers. It might have been ended because of injury, because of we just got phased out. And you got to wake up that next day and you realize, well, who am I? Like, yes, I'm an athlete, but I'm so many of the other things as well that we oftentimes just push down under the waistband or underneath the couch, feeling that they don't exist and hiding them away. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because your business or your work or your livelihood is one part of your life and you have these other areas of your life as well. And in my experience in the car dealership, anyway, that's how, I made my living for a tiny little bit so I could afford my travels. But there's a lot of wealthy people in that industry and a lot of them had a lot of health challenges. You know what I mean? Where they were able to get a lot of the great income, but they weren't able to balance that with their health. And so we need to definitely think about these things because if you don't over a long enough period of time, you're going to get really ill, you're going to get really obese, or something's going to happen to force you to change. So bringing that balance in is super important. And also, I like to give the example for peak performers where if your life is really phenomenal outside the field, you're going to perform better on the field. And if your life is total crap off the field, you're going to perform worse on the field or at work, which is an incredibly important thing to consider when you want to quote unquote achieve your best. It's totally possible to be able to marry the two worlds. And in your book, you go into a little bit that you call the cheat codes. Now, I don't know if you want to give them all away, but I love the idea for cheat codes because sometimes you've already brought up one that's just awareness, becoming aware. Like you said, you know what? I can't look at my phone right away because that's going to start my day in a negative spiral. So you might do that one or two times and then go, no, knock it off. So then you do the opposite. You put your shoes on, you go out the door. With that little bit of awareness, you can change your decision making, right? And add in and stack on top all these other positive habits you want, right? So you're nipping this negative habit in the butt. And there's, I'm sure, more things like that. I'm just curious if that's what the cheat codes are.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever played the game Mike Tyson's Punch Out? Remember that game at all?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Mike, Mike
Oh
Tyson's
yeah.
Punch Out. And the funny thing is, if nobody's familiar, if you're not familiar with Mike Tyson's Punch Out, is what in the was it in the 90s, early
Yeah,
90s
90
or
something.
okay.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is with Mike Tyson's Punch Out is if you would beat certain guys after you'd beat a certain character, you'd get this code. And so the next time you wanted to play the game, you didn't actually have to go through the game anymore. You actually just typed in that code. And if you wanted to, you can go directly straight to play Tyson, right? So that's why I look at it the same way. Like we all have these cheat codes that we can use to fast forward the process, right? So for me, in my business, for example, some of my cheat codes when I first started was I read the book 4-Hour Work Week like 15 years ago, whenever it came out. It was several years ago. And I learned about like outsourcing, realizing, oh my goodness, I don't have to do everything. Just because it can come to me, I can either do it, I can either delegate it, I can outsource it, or maybe I can decide, you know what, I just don't have to do it to begin with. So for you, it's identifying what are some of those cheat codes. I realized that for me, that if I wanted to be successful, I have to get coaches. So yes, I am an executive coach, I'm a performance coach, but I have an improv coach, a personal improv coach to help me navigate on my feet. I have a voice coach because they help me just improve my voice. I have a spiritual advisor. I have a business coach, right? So for me, I realized instead of me just picking up the book, like how about I bring somebody into my life that already knows the hurt, that already knows the challenges and can help me fast forward the process, right? So for you, it's really identifying what are some of those cheat codes that you can use. Sometimes I realize that you know that if you put it into your calendar, it guarantees that it gets completed. So a lot of the stuff in this book that I really talk about is really identifying the main question. We focus on the what, we focus on the why, we even focus on the where, but the biggest W that we often ignore is the who that we need to be. So for me, when I needed to do a workout, yes, I wanted to lose weight, but the who that I needed to be was someone who finished workouts. That's who I needed to be to get to what I wanted. So the reason why this all comes together is for my cheat codes, that's what worked for me. But for you, you need to identify who do you want to be and what are going to be the cheat codes or the systems that are going to fast forward your process that works for you. Now, if you're unfamiliar with those might be, like literally take an inventory of your life. What are the things that you know work for you? And what are the distractions that you need to remove? And oftentimes when you do that and really be introspective instead of always thinking about what's the next thing and what's the next thing, it can really help us identify what exactly is working best for us. But we have to take a moment to pause, meditate, be reflective to really identify what works for us, what I need to double down on, and what do I need to remove.
I love that. That's so simple and practical. And it just comes back to like the self-assessment, the self-awareness, right? Because we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and those change over time. So if you're doing this on a monthly basis, they're going to change over time because you're going to be correcting some things and then some things are going to fall through the wayside. And you might even have to put some things on the back burner. Maybe you got a big project coming on. So your health and fitness is going to be downgraded just for that little bit. But as you re-engage with this process, you're going to make sure the next month that you're checking on things to see where you are, that it's not getting totally out of hand. So that awareness is so key. And I'm curious from your work, there's a lot coming out about like neuroscience and biohacking and all these different technical tools. How do you use any of those indicators or like tracking and things like that, like apps or tools or biohacking? Or do you kind of keep that simple with like a journaling process and things of that nature?
So one thing that I know for biohacking is transcendental meditation. Meditation works really well for me. And so, when I'm thinking about that, and let me know, is my mic working? Sometimes it just kind of cut out. How's it sounding good? Cool.
Yep.
Is oftentimes we're working about the next step, the next step, the next step. That meditation really helps me like really clear that noise. So meditation for me, in terms of biohacking, like breathing really helps for me, but not actually the breathing in, it's actually the breathe out that really, really calms me. Because oftentimes when we're thinking about breath work or the breathing, we focus breathing in, but that's to cause you to hyperventilate. But it's actually the breathe out that actually causes the calming mechanism. And I also did just a couple of weeks ago, getting into a lot more of light therapy, or it's called the Lucia light therapy. So you close your eyes, you have this light going on, but it's almost supposed to bring in almost a month of meditation in one session, right? So for me, those are some of the things that I do for biohacking. Let's be real. There's also another thing that I do for biohacking. I'll say this. I believe that psychedelics have really helped for me. And I know, I think it's okay to say now because Aaron Rodgers now came out talking about it.
This show specifically, you're totally fine. Yep.
Right? It's about my audience. Like, let's be real. I mean, oftentimes, yes, I've been a professional athlete. I've traveled around the globe. High performance, we can say that. But the thing that's really transformed my life the most was an ayahuasca ceremony that really just changed the way that I have it of see the world. And I think it was actually on the last episode, but from my overall experience through that, there was a lot of things that I took away. But one of them is to no longer live a life of chase fear, but more focused on love, right? So if there's any decision in my life that's being led by fear, it's like, no. What does love? What does passion? What is it that I truly want that's going to drive my life? And then two, realizing that we are actually in control of our decisions, right? And how we decide to live life. And also, sometimes it's not about moving faster, but sometimes it's about moving slower to get the results that you're looking for. So sometimes when I feel like I'm in a rut, sometimes it is, psychedelics or edibles that kind of just bring me out of this meat suit, this brain, just to have me think about different ways of navigating, seeing different problems through the world.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree. And I appreciate you sharing that because even though psychedelics and plant medicines are becoming a lot more popular, there is still a stigma. There could be. And I know a lot of people from my world anyway of traveling have brought a lot more CEOs and corporate types to ayahuasca ceremonies because this isn't something that is fun per se. You know what I mean? It can be
No.
expensive, but this is a very
Crazy.
serious endeavor. And that's step one, though. It's that awareness. Our minds are very good at getting into habits and ruts and keeping things the same. And what a plant medicine can do is just shatter that whole thing so that what it does is it attaches you to your heart a little bit. What's most important, right? What are some of these illusions that you're attaching to that you don't need? And how can you then
You mean all of it?
re-engage?
You mean all of this is an illusion? And the conditioning that's, let's be real, like it's all of it an illusion. It's all conditioning, right? It's all the identities that we attach ourselves to that at any moment we can release it, right? Even we can talk about being a CEO of a major corporation, but if you go to other parts of the world, they're like, I've never heard of you. So where is your identity when you go to different parts of the world or different times? So the way that it's really helped me is to remove the ego, remove all of that, not playing the game or understanding that this game of life is kind of a game that you choose how you want to play it. You choose the things that you want to attach yourself to, but you also have the choice to detach, right? One of the biggest experience that I had when I was under the medicine the first night, I'm sorry I interrupted, but it got kind of passionate in this, is I remember I was sitting there and I was really, really deep under it. And I remember sitting there and all of a sudden, it really started I feel it throughout my whole entire body. And all of a sudden this voice was coming to me. He's like, oh, you're a piece of garbage. You're a piece of this, like really digging into me, really digging into me. And then even the shaman came to me and I'm like, get out of here. You're like, what, shaman, you think you from one medicine plant experience and all of a sudden you're going to change us and change this experience? Like literally talking major trash to the shaman. And all of a sudden it was like, I felt like millions of me coming at me. And it was like, this was greed and this was envy. And all of a sudden I just felt like, and I kept pushing it away. And every single time I pushed these individuals away, more kept coming. And I said, all of a sudden, a voice came and said, okay, I got to do something different. Like, yes, you do. And at that moment, it says, instead of pushing them away, do something different. All of a sudden, I took a step back. And all of the me's kind of just like bumped into each other and were just like fighting. And like, okay. And I stepped on kind of moving back and moving back, almost as though I was looking at them in a stadium as they just kind of fight. And that's just like envy and greed and all this kind of stuff. And from that experience, it taught me that you can have greed, you can have all that, but you don't have to own it. That's just watch that in the corner. You can choose to be loved. You don't have to own all of these behaviors or all of these actions. Just observe them. Let them fight. Let them just tire themselves out in the corner. And that gave me a lot of freedom to realize, no, you don't have to be these emotions. You choose who you want to be. And that's why a lot of my coaching work, I don't do personality tests. I don't do Myers-Briggs, because I asked every single client, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Yes, you might have been an introvert. Cool. Who do you want to be? Do you still want to be an introvert? Oh, my family's always been cursing and abusive. Well, who do you want to be in this moment? You have the choice. Can you put your hand down? Yes. Can you put your hand down? Yes. Cool. And so at the end of the day, any question that I ask anybody is, I don't care. Like, if you look at a GPS never asks you, where were you yesterday? They don't care. They care, who are you right now? And where do you want to go?
I love that, man. Thanks for sharing that powerful story. Ayahuasca has a way of helping you realize things in sometimes traumatic fashion. And it's powerful, though, especially for people who haven't had that experience, but just understanding like, okay, we need to transcend the ego and who we think we are, right? So we can figure out who we actually want to become. How do we want to be in our character, in our values, in our day-to-day, and everything else, and come back and do that assessment. And plant medicines can be very helpful for the reset button, but that's only stage one, because that's almost not like the easy part, but kind of in a way it was like, oh my goodness, okay, I don't want to do that, because that was all ego led. That was by default. That was, me wanting to be cool and have materialism and status and all these different things, which is great. But it's like, all right, this is who I want to become. But now once you recognize that, then the work happens. Right? Like then you have to go do that day by day, little by little, and begin to chisel yourself into this new person, and have all those stumbling blocks along the way, and not beat yourself up and be terrible. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you fell today, so you're a big loser again. And you know what I mean? So, and I've seen that. I think it's more common, well, maybe in like the ayahuasca space, but I've had people where I've coached or been near them, and they've had this great awakening of who they wanted to be, but materialism and ego got them back, because it was very hard to stay on that path. So for you, which is incredibly powerful coaching, because with people who have big influence, their model resonates with everybody else, right? They see that leader, and that the quality of person is going to resonate down the field. They're going to perform better. They're going to know themselves better, but they're also going to offer that down the line, right? To everybody that they're working with. So when you're helping people to understand like who they want to be, like what kind of process is that like for you? Like doing that self-assessment, and then do you help them with the plan? And how do you, this is a lot of questions and you can take it as you wish, but like that behavioral change, right? It's just like, I know I need to change where I'm stop eating snack food, or I'm being a dick, or, you know what I mean? I need to change. What have you learned to create those behavioral changes that last and they stick, and it can help people really, cement this new way of being?
Yeah. And then this is what kind of the next right move focuses on. There's a 6-stage process, right? Oh. The first one is I almost tell them, I want you to imagine it's a year down the road, right? So the first one is really identifying the what and the why you want it. So let's say it's January 1st, 2024, and you wake up in your bed, you have a smile on your face because you were able to accomplish everything that you wanted. And people are gonna say, I want to be happy, I want to be successful. Like, but what does that actually look like? Be specific. Like, how would you know if you wake up and your eyes are open that you know you're successful? How do you know that you have the relationship that you want? Is it that you're going on date nights with your partner twice a week, right? So you really get them to be specific and identify the what and the why that they want it. Then the number 2 is the who that you need to be. So you go to the what and then the who that you need to be. And the funny thing is about the who is you get to make that choice. Like, who do you need to become to be that more centered person at home? Well, that might be someone that asks questions first before they speak, or it might be the person that pauses first before they get in there in an argument, or it might be a person that when they walk home, they put their phone down and actually engage with the family, right? So really identifying who do you need to be. Next is really identifying for the who that you needed to be. The third step is identifying those next right moves, or what I call these as these micro habits, right? So for the who that I need to be, the first thing that I need to first do is identify, well, if the who that I need to be is to be someone that is more connected at home, well, then that means the who that I need to be in that micro step might be, I do not check my phone for the first hour in the morning, right? So I know that if I do that next right move of that micro habit of not checking my phone in the morning, that's going to align to the who that I want and also align to the what that I want. But we all know there's something called life when we make these plans. So after we have the what, the who, the micro habits, and the what's, is we then have to identify what are the things that are going to get us off track. And I call these glitches and these distractions. So it's here where I say, what are the things in your life that you need to remove out of your life? It might be people, it might be mindsets, it might be vices. So once you're able to do that, I realize that, you know what, AK, having ice cream in your refrigerator isn't helping you lose weight or get in shape. Cool, then what do? Remove that. If you realize that somebody in your life might be particularly negative, okay, well then can you remove them? Maybe if you can't remove them, maybe it might just be I remove certain things that I talk about. It might be you might have a friend that always puts down your business ideas. Then cool, that might just be the friend you talk to about weekend activities and having fun, right? And then you go into once you remove those distractions, you've added those cheat codes. I mean, next distraction. Then you go to those cheat codes. There's like, okay, then what do you need to do to implement in your life that can be that cheat code that fast forwards your process? And then the final question that's the most important, and this is the final one, is what are you going to actually do? So starting tomorrow, what are you actually going to implement and activate? So for everybody, I take them through the process of the what, the who, the micro habits, what distraction you need to move out of your way, what's going to be the cheat code you have to move forward, and what's that one thing that you can start tomorrow to fast forward or at least just start the process and the habit forming process to begin with.
That's amazing. I love that. That whole framework really encompasses everything. And so I'll ask an additional question. So you coached me through, and I'm like, oh yeah, so good. But then limiting beliefs, and I don't think I can do it. And fear come up. How do you help people with like the self-worth idea, being good enough, and just like self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, all of these that negative army that comes in. How do you help people deal with that?
Yeah. This is where it all goes to the skill sets, the mindset, and activation. You have to first identify, well, why is there self-sabotaging? Why is there negative beliefs? You know, one of the things I learned about at the University of Oregon, right? When I got into college, I wasn't the top athlete by any means, but I put myself in an environment where I was literally next to the top sprinters in the country. And that's who I trained with every single day. So oftentimes I ask people like, well, if you have a lot of these self-limiting beliefs, who's your network? Who in your network? Are you around a network where, like, for example, are you going to have self-limiting beliefs about public speaking if all of your friends are public speakers? Are you going to have self-limiting beliefs? And it's like, I can't work out if all of your people that you hang out with are like bodybuilders, right? So oftentimes it's like, it might just be the circle you're in. And sometimes this is even the more important question. Are you the one in your group that is actually affecting the rest of the group negatively? Right? You might be looking around. If everybody in the group is negative, what is the terminology that you're using when you're around them? You might actually be the one in your network that is actually building down the group. So at the end of the day, what I usually say is we have to be able to do two things. One, I think the biggest thing to really be successful in this life is awareness. Because if you don't even realize that it's a problem, if you don't even realize that there's who you want to be, if you don't even realize all of these challenges, then it's really hard for you to do anything in life, right? When I look at the business sector, it really goes down to two extremes. If we want to simplify the business world, you either have people on the side that are helping people identify what they want, right? You might see coaches, therapists, individuals like that people help people identify what they want, all the way to the other side of giving people what they want. Amazon, products. Every business falls in that sector. Where do you want to play? Either you're the person helping people identify what they want or giving them what they want, right? And if you're a business that can help people identify what they want and also give them what they want, usually a service industry or a product industry, you're going to be able to work for the rest of your life and have clients for the rest of your life. So I think for everybody, is first you have to identify. If you don't know what you want, find someone that you know that can help you identify what you want. And then once you identify what you want, tag up with somebody that can get you what you want.
I love that. And it kind of goes back to what you shared before about coaches. Like, you surround yourself with people that are going to make you better. That's like an athletic perspective. I have always wanted the best coaches, people who knew better than me. And when I'm learning something, I want to be the worst in the group. If I want to learn sprinting, I want to be around the fastest people. I'm the slowest person because I'm going to get so much better. And that's what I ended up doing with snowboarding. I went around and got around the absolute best snowboarders. And then, 5 years later, I'm like, I'm still in my own mind. I'm like, oh, I'm not as good as the best of the best of the best, but I'm better than 90% of the world flying over 70-foot jumps, spinning through the air. But because my sights are set at the absolute highest, and I actually just repeated that same process with wanting to get stronger. I never really lifted weights through martial arts. I started to, do deadlifts and squats, and I set a goal of 500 and recently hit that and was like, yes, like now it's not the strongest power lifter in the world, but as far as strength goes, the average person, it's way up there. But I use the same formula for everything. It's the same thing. And it doesn't matter what you use it for, whether it's a sports or business or life or family, you have to identify it first, then come up with an action plan. And what you shared in your process is incredibly valuable, because then you can become aware of, what, if I choose this goal, what are the things that are going to come up that are going to derail me?
Exactly.
And that just that awareness there, self-sabotage. And I used to, when I was coaching athletes a little bit more, it would be like on the starting gates or ready to drop in, and have a plan ready for like those negative mindsets if they are going to come in or they do crash, right? Well, what's a powerful frame of mind? So if it did happen, they weren't like left out in the wings and they didn't really know how to handle it. It's like, well, if this happens, this is exactly what you're going to do. This is the best perspective we've come up with together. And you can reset and you can re-engage so quickly. Do you want to add on to that? You look like you're going to jump in.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to say, I mean, I love it. I love that. And, when I think about it, and I work with a lot of leaders and athletes, I think the reason why athletes are so successful, especially you talk about those high performers, is I usually use example of the stock market. Do you trade at all? Are you in the market at all?
No, I'm playing that game.
Okay, we'll just say you play the game. We might actually be able to. You'll still understand the example, right? So there's three types of, we'll say, traders. You have the day trader, you have the swing trader, and you'll have that long-term investor, right? And so I want people to not think about this not just from trading, but from the holistic approach. Now, if you're a day trader, that means you're going to go in and out of that stock or that company the same day. So if you're in that stock and if you know that you're going to be in only that day and the stock begins to drop, what do you think happens to those day traders?
They get stressed.
They get stressed. Like, oh my goodness, it's going down. What do I do? Okay. They have to be by the computer. They have to watch everything that's happening because they don't want to miss it, because all of a sudden, if something happens, whoa, that's some stress. Now, but you have the second one, you have the swing trader. Now, the swing trader says, you know what? I'm going to get in today. In either a couple days or a couple weeks, I'm going to decide to get out. Now, for that same individual, if the stock jumps down a little bit, how do you think they're feeling?
Less stressed.
Less stressed. Like, okay, it might turn around and something can happen, but at some point, I'm going to get out when it at least hits to the point that I want to hit. Now you got that long-term investor, right? Might that person maybe put in their 401k, or they They're buying companies or investing in companies, and they might check their portfolio maybe once a month or maybe even once a year. What do you think happens to them when that stock goes down just a little bit? How do you think it affects their
Unaffected.
day?
Yeah, not at
Not
all.
affected. Not affected. Because what they realize is that about, am I trending up? That's all they care about. They know life is going to have its ups and have its downs. And so, what I even learned from meditation, with a lot of the work that you have people that are really high performers, they have the long term mindset, the long term investor mindset. Because they realize, okay, I understand that I had a bad practice. I understand that I had a bad meet, but where does this look like in the overall plan? So whenever you go into a company and you realize it's like, oh my goodness, this person's frantic and they're all swirling all the time. Like, what happened to this? Well, who are they? They're the day trader trying to navigate through the world. So my thing to you is, how can you be a swing trader, or how can you have the long-term mindset? And oftentimes the reason people don't know this is because they haven't identified their what they want. They don't even know who they are. They're literally living day by day, hoping that things turn out. And so my goal when
Wow.
I work with people is like, how do we have the long-term mindset, but still be able to play the day-to-day, but knowing, hey, just because you had a bad day does not mean we're looking for this. Where's your life trending?
That's a brilliant analogy. I absolutely love that. And I share something often on the podcast where it's like, if you have a worthy goal that comes from your heart, that's truly what is inspiring to you, that's made from you, you don't care about the result. You
No.
want to get it. You were willing to put everything into it, but your success, your self-worth, your happiness isn't subject to getting that result. It's the journey there. That's your
Yeah.
job. And ideally it's as successful as you can be, but you're so aligned with what you want to do that you're okay to put that effort in, and you're also okay and you surrender to the result. And we know this through sports as well. You can only practice, perform, and set yourself up for success as much as you can. Right? We know
Yeah.
that from martial arts. We know that from somebody's faster, somebody's whatever, they win on that day. You can just prepare the best that you can do. And then you'll know if you keep losing, maybe somebody else was better at those distractions. Maybe they were more focused.
Yep.
Maybe their training was better, all these different things. And then you remember all the times you partied or cheated on your diet or missed a training session or whatever the case is, right? So the plan that we can execute can be in all areas of our life. It can be for our health to make sure that's strong and vibrant. It can be for our business that we kick ass in whatever business we have. And then I think what you suggested at the beginning that's so important is, well, what's the plan and strategy you have in place for your family, for your
Yeah.
relationships, for your downtime, for your spirituality, for the things that are going to light you up? And when we can bring all of those together, we're going to be performing at such a higher level, but it's going to be one of more peace, more content, and more genuine success. And the question I have is, if you want to
Yeah.
talk about what I just said, go ahead. But I'm also curious, from working with these people who are successful, quote unquote, how do you define success for yourself, and how do you move into the world of like fulfillment? When ayahuasca kind of like really will smash your brain in perspective and consciousness, it's also like the remembering of the joy in the journey. And I'm just
Mhm.
curious how you cue that up for yourself, right? When things get stressful and, you're kind of, I don't know, something's gone wrong and it peaks up, or you want to be successful. How do you share that and coach people who haven't maybe not seen this place yet? You know what I mean? You got to bring them out of
Yeah.
the ego into these other parts that are going to really add value to their lives.
Yeah, I got two examples. I'm gonna use it personally as well. When I was writing the book, I was in the final stages, right, of writing the book. And I decided to just take a little edible, just to get it working. And I remember sitting there, and I always ask an intention when I take it. It's like, let me know what I need to know at this moment. It's like, I want to know the secret of how I can like finish off this like final 1%. And I remember sitting down at my computer, and the message said, your mom and your daughter are outside, and this is a rare opportunity to have your mom, your wife, and your daughter all in the same room together. And I grew up as a triplet. I grew up in a family of 8. So this is the only time, to be honest, that I had my mom in my house for 2 weeks where she didn't have to be somewhere. And I said, in my mind, I was like, you got to get this done, this book done. But it says, you're missing the most important opportunity. Just right out that door. Just step outside. and enjoy that moment with your family. Because this is a rare opportunity of 3 generations of women all just sitting on that couch, just having a conversation. And so for me, when I deal with a lot of leaders, it's the same thing. It is, they feel like, okay, just if I get to this point, then I will relax. But I tell them every single time, like, you think the company or your board members or your advisors or your investors, that if you hit all these big numbers, they're going to be like, okay, you're cool now. Now take that vacation. Like, no, they're going to throw more on you and more on you, meaning it's never going to end. It won't end. There's always going to be something you have to do. And we know this is even as athletes, called the day after effect. I talk with Olympians, multiple time Olympians, professional athletes, and what happens? They get that award, they get that Oscar, they get that thing, and then what happens? They wake up the next morning, and what happens to the world? It keeps on spinning. It keeps on spinning. So they've been sacrificing all of this stuff for their lives and realizing, cool. And so what I tell them to do is, like, if you find yourself extremely busy, like extremely busy, and you're unhappy, the number one thing is that most likely you're pushing down the things that are on your to-do list or on your agenda that are the things that bring you joy. And so I'll ask these leaders to do is, like, I want you to put a list together of 100 things that you like, are passionate about, and enjoy and love doing. And then I would say every week you need to mark one of these things off. Because usually when you're busy, when you're successful and things are busy, it's all of those things that you're not doing. So how many times I got people to start playing an instrument, learning a new language, because they said, once I get successful, then I can do it. It's like, no, you physically can do this right now. Like, nothing's stopping you. I was having a conversation with one of my best friends today, and I said, we have agency in our lives, and every single time you blame it on something else, you're taking away that agency. When you say, I can't do this hobby because of work, like, no. You literally can. Do it. And so my goal with the coaching, and it's so crazy. I was having a conversation with my clients yesterday, and we were talking about her overall journey. And on day one, I let them identify, like, who do you want to be? What's the path that you want to get there? And then it takes them 6 months or longer to realize you could have done this on day one. You go through 6 months just realizing all this stuff by the end. You could have done this from day one. And then once you realize on day one that you could have done this, that you realize that you have the agency, then I ask them the question, and what life do you want to live, knowing that you have control over your life? That's really what all my coaching is. It's help people realize you have the agency. And then once you have the agency, what type of life do you want to live? I want to play the piano. Cool. Let's go on Amazon. Let's go this. Let's get you it. Start playing.
That's amazing. I love that. It's so simple. And it's amazing how we can forget those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you spoke about the agency, because if we don't have that recognition that we are the ones that mainly influence our reality, right? It's how we respond to anything. We'll be victims. Let me finish that. How we respond to what happens. That's how we create who we want to be. But if we don't take that opportunity, then we're victims of whatever, right? Of life. And we can't be creators. And so you get into blame, victimhood, complaining, and things like that. And then the other thing I found as a common thread is that if people are just full of self-gain, then there's no amount of self-gain that they will have that will give them true fulfillment. But if their business and their life is about serving others in some capacity, whether being the best at your job and being a positive influence for your, whatever the case is, but if it's only like, I'm going to work this job and I'm going to make the most amount of money ever, and I'm going to have all the material goods, there's no amount of that success that breeds true fulfillment. It's, from everyone that I've spoken to. So when we can combine those worlds, and we can add that, we're going to be better in our jobs, because whatever job that we're doing, if we like it, we can excel at it. And if we'd like to modify it, we can do that too. everything is an option when you realize that you're the creator. And then when you steer your intentions and you know who you are even deeper, you just align that vision, you align that direction, and then you just take the steps necessary through each day. So it seems simple, but as you said earlier, life happens and it can get complicated and all these things come up, but we just got to come back to that path. And that's where
Yeah.
coaches and frameworks and things can be very helpful. So, man, this has been, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you said something really powerful. And people said, so you're saying if I do all this stuff that I'm never going to have problems? I'm like, let's look at it this way. You have two people driving down the road. I live in California. You got the 405 and busy traffic. You got one person driving down the road. They get cut off. Now that person, oh my goodness, I can't believe that person cut me off. They're angry. Then what do? They go home and they go to their wife or their partner, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they cut me off. Can you believe this place in XYZ? Meaning they hold on to that anger for weeks, months. They create that as an identity. The next time they're on the road, can't believe that person cut me off. I'm going to be this aggressive driver. Now that same second person driving down the road, somebody cuts them off. All they do is, right back on the road. So the question that I tell people are like, yes, is life going to be perfect? No. But how long are you going to go off track and get back on track? So the goal is we all have a plan, but who's going to be the one that something happens in their way and they are off on a tangent for weeks versus who's that person when something happens? Whoop, I'm only off my game for 5 minutes and I go back on the plan at hand. So don't think that life is going to be perfect. You need to be the one that's able to get back on track relatively quickly once the unexpected happens.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because that's what I have deduced from some episodes in education and peak performance. It's literally just that thing, that the peak performer is able to get back on track quicker. The higher the performer, the better they're able to get back on track. So one example was Stephen Kotler being on the podcast, and he just talked about his day. And he said, you know, the more productive I got, it was going from after first you plan, know where you're going to go. Then you put it into what needs to be done, and then you do those tasks. But then as the performance and efficiency upgrades, it's your ability to go from task to task without all the distractions and nonsense. Right. So it's not like an hour of work and then pissing around on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube or whatever. Right. You got a big 2-hour gap or a day gap. Right. It's one to another to another. And it's the same thing with getting derailed. Whether it's like a negative thing or a challenge that comes in, it's like, okay, handling it efficiently and then moving on to the next, because the mind and the ego can be very easily distracted, but the more we can be aligned, the more we're going to have the capacity, the awareness, and the energy to overcome that. Say, okay, you know, I recognize this is a challenge, but the inspiration of this goal is so big, I'm going to handle what's necessary and come back to it. And if you don't really have that, then almost like the distractions are compelling. It's almost like a break. It's like an eddy in the water of this default chaotic world. So I'll take this break, you know what I mean? Because then it's just this infinite task over here that I don't really care about. But when you care about something and you know where your vision and your why and all that other stuff, you're going to be more motivated. And that's the stream that's more enjoyable because you're the creator of it. And I think there's a big distinction between creating life on purpose by your own definition, knowing who the heck you actually are and what's most important to you and what you want to bring to the world and what you want to create. And by default, where you haven't really asked those questions, you're making money, you're not making money, whatever the case, just kind of going around doing whatever. They're two different ways to live. And one, I think, is going to be a lot more fulfilling if you truly know who you are. And it just refines over time using the same processes.
Yeah. And like final two things is, you know, two kind of examples. You know, when I was going through a really tough time, I was in an environment that wasn't very supportive. I was, and some of my mentors when I first started were like books, like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, and these were the circles that I had to create because I didn't have that around me. And at some point I got annoyed. I'm like, all these people are saying the same thing. I keep saying the same thing. And I got frustrated. And then one day I was sitting there and an idea came to me, like maybe there's a reason that they're saying the same thing over and over again. See, what I was expecting was that the person that actually needed to be different wasn't them. It was me. I was waiting for, what's this new thing that I need to have? Like, no, 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 this is it. This is what you need to do. You need to be consistent. That's why everybody's saying the same thing. And I was expecting them to change when it was actually I needed to change. I needed to be consistent. And one of the things I said at the very beginning, the hardest skill to learn in this world is consistency. You know, I did the 400. And if anybody knows what the 400 is, that's one time around the track. And if anybody's ever seen that race, is oftentimes people think that the race starts when the gun goes off. Like, yes, the time starts, but the race doesn't start until you're actually 200 or halfway through the track. And that race starts because that's when things get a little bit uncomfortable. Your legs get a little bit tired. Maybe in the workforce, it's like you started a new job and everything's amazing, but all of a sudden you got a performance review that wasn't as high as you thought it was. Or you had to try to do a sale and somebody wasn't exactly as excited as you thought it was. But going back to that 400 example, is you're halfway through the race, and that's when you start to see people start gapping a little bit. But when you get onto that home stretch, what you start to see is that person starting to start leading the pack, starting to break away. Now, what people don't really know, if you actually look at the breakdown, is that nobody's actually negative splitting, meaning you're not running the first 200, the second 200 faster than the first 200. So you're actually getting slower. But on that home stretch, the person that actually wins, it's the person that's actually dying the least. They're not speeding up. Is that everybody else is dying more. Why? And you start to notice, everybody that's starting to die more, what are they doing? They start crossing their arms. They start looking left and right. But it's the one that stays the most consistent, the one that keeps that first 200, keep that second 200, that actually ends up winning the race. So a lot of people think, I'm almost done. Do I got to do something special? Like, no, just continue with what you were doing. And that is what's going to have you win the day. So if anybody's here, if I have to say anything to anybody, stop trying to find these new things. And maybe obviously this ChatGPT, there's all this new technology out there. But what's going to win out is most people just aren't consistent. That's what makes high performers high performers. And yes, people are going to say, well, LeBron James and all these amazing athletes. But at the end of the day, you still have to stay consistent. Don't use somebody else's reasoning why you can't. I had this example yesterday. Somebody says, well, yes, you can be a better speaker. And there's like, well, are you saying I can do whatever I want to? Like, I can't be playing the NBA at 5'10". I was like, why do these people always use the most obscure example? Well, I'm not 7 feet tall. Like, what does you not being 7 feet tall have anything to do with you calling that friend and asking for and apologizing to them? You're trying to find reasons that justify your actions. And I guarantee you that 5'10" player that wants to play in the NBA that isn't making that excuse is someone like a Muggsy Bogues or a Steph Curry that's only 6'3", right? So at the end of the day, don't use the excuses to stop you from taking action and staying consistent and really not being a no call and no show to yourself.
I love that. That's an amazing analogy. And I ran in high school, so you tortured yourself. I think 400 and 800 are some of the worst because you have to run as fast as possible and you're basically dying. It's just like, it sucks. Yeah. At least like when I was doing long distance, it was like a little bit of suffering over a long period of time. But the 400 is like, okay, you're effed and you have to keep running as fast as bloody. So good for you. What was your fastest time?
So when we were at the top, we ran 3 flat in the 4x4, still a school record for today, but my split then was 45-20, 45-2.
Wow. Holy smokes. That's absurd. So whoever's listening to this, just for fun, go run a 400. And, I think sprinting is good. Even as an adult, it shows you how much you suck at fitness. Anyway, you go run a 400 and see how bad you are. Even run 100 If you ran 100, they're not going to be doing. They're not going to run it that fast. That is
Yeah.
absurd, man. Good for you. And it's such a beautiful analogy for how we can be successful. And I've run into that through martial arts, because martial arts is just overcoming those painful boundaries, right? And
Mhm.
staying consistent and pushing through the hurt. And we kind of live in a soft world now. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
learning to do that, that's how we grow and get better. Right. And like you said, it's enduring that pain, enduring the load of what we have to endure to get to that next level. That's going to make us successful. And so the most important thing that you've touched on, and I absolutely agree with, is find that thing that you're willing to bear it for. Find something so
Mhm.
meaningful that when you're dying at the last 100 meters, you're like, I care about this thing so much that I can give everything that I have to it. And then that's a beautiful pursuit. That's a beautiful endurance. That's a beautiful thing to work towards, right? And it's meaningful to you, so you're willing to
Mhm.
put in that work.
And I want to say this second thing is, I think it goes on that both sides. I think you need to find something that you're willing to endure. And I think you also need to find something in your life that you're willing to suck at and have fun at. Because everybody thinks that you have to, like, well, I want to play the piano, but I can't be amazing. Have fun just being crappy at it and just enjoy. Not everything needs to be always about productivity, because it's going to be in that joy of just doing something because you enjoy it, not because you need to post it, just because you enjoy it. So a lot of the people I say is also, yes, find that thing you're passionate about, but also find that thing that you suck at and just enjoy, where there's no ego attached to it, where you can just have fun doing it. Because that's the thing that we don't talk about a lot, is just, it's okay to suck at things. It's okay, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is not talked about a lot. And it's the idea of going to the gym. If you're terribly out of shape, great, go. Even more
Mhm.
reason to go. You don't need to be good at any of these things. And if you enjoy it, just do it. And I guess in my analogy specifically, it's like a worthy goal that you love, because you'll start at crappy, but you will get better. And it's not
Mhm.
about being the best, but yeah, having things that you enjoy, that you love, that you do for fun. You don't have to compare, right? Comparison is the thief of joy.
With
I'm
joy.
never as I could train all day, every day, and you're going to kick my ass at the 400 forever. That's just the way it's going to be. You know what I mean? But I don't know if you can do a kickflip on a skateboard. But
No,
if you like skateboarding, then that's why I love
try it.
skateboarding. Go have fun. Go experience it. You don't need to be the best. And if you find something you love, give everything you have to it to be the best. And whatever that is okay too. So it's a
Yeah.
great additional point. Buddy, this has been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed this. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Anything you wish that I'd asked, or you want to leave the listeners with before we close the show?
Now, I think a lot of listeners are probably thinking, it sounds so easy. What's happening in my life? It can't be that easy. And I'm not saying it's that easy, but at the same time, it kind of is. And the reason I say that, and I'm speaking to each and every single one of you, is yes, is like you have control over the decisions that you make. And even if you don't like the circumstance that you're in, it may not be easy, but you can decide, I want to leave that situation. And so if I want anybody to leave here today, I want you to answer this one question. Who do you want to be? I don't care what's happened in the past. I don't care what happened earlier today. In this moment, right now, who will you choose to be? And then live that out.
I love that. Incredibly powerful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your work and your book that people can go check out. If people want to follow you and they want to get in touch, where should they go?
Yeah. So we have a few different ways you can reach out. Obviously on LinkedIn, it's Coach AK at Kwakor or coachak.com. You can find me online. I do a lot of executive coaching, so you can find me there. If you're an individual and has a team, or you're a leader that wants to do some stuff about like team building, or you just want to grow yourself, or you are a startup. I have a lot of different things that I'm involved in, but if you have a startup and you're looking to find ways to develop your tech stack with all the stuff that's happening and help you scale your operations in 90 days, reach out to me. That's mobile XA. But the easiest way to find me is go to coachak.com. I'm on most of the social media handles and looking forward to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for your work. And I really
Thank you,
enjoyed
man.
this.
I appreciate it. Take care, y'all.
My pleasure. See you guys.